The first thing that broke wasn't my marriage. It was the way she said it, like it meant nothing. Just a little fun, my wife said, 6 months pregnant, as if she were talking about trying a new dessert. Her name is Sloane Harrington. We lived in a quiet part of Greenwich, Connecticut, where the houses were large, but the lives inside them were carefully curated. I'm Carter Whitfield, a corporate attorney who believed in control, structure, and predictable outcomes. And none of those things existed in that moment. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look ashamed. She just sat across from me at our kitchen island, one hand resting casually on her stomach, the other holding a glass of water like nothing had shifted. The problem wasn't just what she did. It was how small she made it sound. I had spent the morning reviewing contracts. She had spent the morning at a cafe. Somewhere between espresso and conversation, she decided to cross a line that most people at least hesitate before approaching. "What do you mean by fun?" I asked, and I hated how calm I sounded. She shrugged. "Exactly what it sounds like, Carter. No defensiveness. No urgency. Just simplicity." And that simplicity felt like a blade. The man's name was Nolan Prescott. He owned the cafe she'd been going to for months. A place I had never once questioned because it seemed so harmless. That was the first mistake. Assuming something is harmless because it looks ordinary. "You're 6 months pregnant," I said, not as an accusation, but as a fact I needed her to acknowledge. She nodded. "I'm aware." The way she said it made it clear she saw no connection between her condition and her choice. That's when I realized we weren't arguing about the same thing. I was thinking about trust, responsibility, and the life we were about to bring into the world. She was thinking about relief, escape, something she wasn't getting from me. "You don't think this matters?" I asked. She leaned back slightly, her expression still composed. "I think you're making it bigger than it is." And there it was, the complete collapse of shared reality. Before we go further, pause for a second and tell me this. If someone you trusted minimized something that's serious, would that hurt more than the act itself? Because in that moment, I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was dealing with indifference. The days that followed were strangely quiet. We didn't yell. We didn't slam doors. We moved around each other like two professionals handling a delicate negotiation neither wanted to escalate. But inside, everything was escalating. I started noticing things I had ignored before. How often she checked her phone. How she lingered a little longer when leaving the house. How her tone changed when his name came up. And yes, his name kept coming up. Not because she was careless, but because she didn't think she needed to hide it anymore. That was the second mistake. Believing honesty without accountability is the same as integrity. I didn't confront Nolan. I didn't show up at the cafe. I didn't create a scene. Because I knew something she didn't. Reactions give people clarity. Silence makes them reveal themselves. So I waited, not out of weakness, but out of observation. And what I observed changed everything. Sloane wasn't just disconnected from me. She was disconnected from the consequences of her own actions. She still talked about nursery colors. She still sent me articles about parenting. She still made plans like we were intact. It was like she had split her life into two separate realities and expected both to continue without collision. That's when the real question started forming in my mind. Not how could she do this, but who is she really? Because betrayal doesn't just reveal a moment. It reveals a pattern. And I needed to know if this was a break from her character or the truth of it. The turning point didn't come from a dramatic confrontation. It came from something quieter. A conversation I wasn't meant to hear. She was in the living room, on the phone, her voice softer than I had heard in months. "I don't regret it," she said. That sentence landed harder than anything she had said to me directly. Because regret is where repair begins. And she had none. I didn't walk in. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. "And Carter will be fine," she added. That part stayed with me the longest. Not because it was cruel, but because it was dismissive. I wasn't a partner in her mind anymore. I was a variable she had already accounted for. That's when the power dynamic shifted. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in clarity. I stopped trying to understand her and started deciding what I was willing to accept. There's a difference, a big one. Understanding keeps you stuck. Deciding moves you forward. The next morning, I sat at the same kitchen island. Same place. Different perspective. She walked in, poured herself coffee, and smiled slightly like everything was normal. "Good morning," she said. I looked at her for a moment. Not with anger, not with love, but with recognition. "I spoke to a lawyer," I said. Her hand paused mid-motion. "For what?" she asked, even though she already knew. "Separation," I replied. Now, finally, there was a crack in her composure. Not a breakdown, but a shift. "Carter, that's extreme," she said. Extreme. That word again. As if my reaction was the problem, not her decision. "I don't think it is," I said calmly. And that's when the conversation changed. She started explaining. Not apologizing. Explaining. "It didn't mean anything," she said. "It was just a moment." But moments don't exist in isolation. They come from somewhere. And I needed her to see that. "Then why did you say you don't regret it?" I asked. Silence. Real silence this time. Not controlled. Not composed. Just absence. "Before we continue, think about this. If someone says they didn't regret hurting you, would any explanation after that even matter? Because for me, that was the line. Not the act, not the details, but the absence of regret. The weeks that followed were not dramatic. They were procedural. Lawyers. Conversations. Arrangements. We didn't destroy each other. We didn't try to win. We just separated. And that's what made it real. Because in real life, things don't always end with explosions. Sometimes they end with decisions. Sloan moved into a smaller place, closer to the city. I stayed in the house, not because I wanted to, but because stability mattered for what was coming next. The child. And that was the part we both had to face. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about someone who had no say in any of it. We agreed on shared responsibility, clear boundaries, no illusions. And strangely, that's where we became more honest than we had been in months. Because once the expectation of being us disappeared, the pressure to pretend disappeared too. Months later, when our child was born, we stood in the same room. Not as a couple, but as two people connected by something bigger than their mistakes. There was no dramatic reconciliation. No sadenruelisation. Just acknowledgement. She looked at me once and said, "I didn't think it would go this far." And I believed her. Not because she was innocent, but because she was human. And humans often underestimate the weight of their choices.